he is a former general and a man known for having pretty little patience. I wonder how he's going to react to the ASEAN method of whatever ASEAN does. Consensus, slow moving, bring the last member along. As you said, he's a 73-year-old man who's trying to become president of Indonesia for a long time. My suspicion is he's going to be a man in a hurry. So how do you think he's going to interact with ASEAN? Will he try and lead it, or will he basically forge his own path?
I think he'll try to lead it. He might, his attempt to show leadership to ASEAN will be a welcome undertaking. I would, you can check with our other ASEANites. I think they've been desiring of leadership from Indonesia, which unfortunately hasn't been forthcoming as much as they would have hoped. And this is legacy, right? When we started in 1967, with just 5 founding members of ASEAN, Indonesia through Suharto, was always able to show leadership in a very humble manner, as much as, perhaps the scripting would have been done collectively or perhaps just by 1 or 2 out of the 5. But the humility that was projected by Suharto at that time, I think, was a necessary commodity for bringing about peace and stability for Southeast Asia for a long time. So that could be something that I think Prabowo is going to try to emulate. But whatever that's going to come out of him, I think could be very different from whatever we might have seen in the last 9.5 years. And I would opine that it would be something that I think most Southeast Asian countries would be welcoming of.
What are Indonesia's security threats? Is it primarily internal security, or do they look externally and see threats to their territorial integrity or their archipelagic integrity? When they sort of rack and stack what concerns them from a defense and security standpoint, what comes out on top?
I've never been in a camp that's believed of meaningful, if not significant, internal security threats, right? Be it centrifugal or centripetal. I think if there's any potential threat, it could be from beyond, right? But it goes back to what you and I had coffee over, Ray, some time ago. I mean, this relates to what could potentially implode in the South China Sea, with what the Filipinos are doing, with respect to what the Chinese are doing. Look, I used to be a code of conduct optimist, but as I confess to you that my optimism with respect to code of conduct has reduced, right? But going back to the reference to potential leadership being shown by somebody like Prabowo, that might be able to put the train back on track as to pursue, what we try to do, in terms of code of conduct, so that we can be a bit more optimistic about the code of conduct. The code of conduct can be resolved, I think, in a multidisciplinary manner, right? One discipline could relate to perhaps the freedom of passage. Another discipline could be with respect to how the economics ought to be spliced between one claimant and another. Another would be just, with respect to simple territorial integrity, which I think is a bit more complicated than the first 2, disciplines or dimensions. But stuff like that, I think, is something that Prabowo would probably try to consider putting on a table for purposes of discussions with other ASEANites and hopefully with people beyond. And I think his inkling is really to try to multilateralize whatever decision or whatever framework that would be necessary for some sort of a resolution.